and we welcome you to our Tree of Life class. And we're studying Yesod. We're actually coming to the end of Yesod. Yesod means foundation. It's the Hebrew word for foundation. And we're coming to the end of Yesod, and which means in a bit, probably as we get into the new year, we'll be taking up Netzach, which is the victory. So where we were last time, we were not here last week because of the Thanksgiving break, but we were speaking at our last class a couple of weeks ago. We were speaking about Yesod from singularity to plurality. Excuse me. So Yesod always goes from singularity to plurality. To plurality. But it always returns to singularity. You will remember that we have discussed concepts like this in Hebrew, in Judaism. The concept of simplicity being found in complexity. And here, singularity being found in plurality. And part of the understanding of this idea is, say I have two. But before I can have two, I have what? One. I have to have one in order to have two, correct? If I do not have one, I cannot have two. But do I have to have two in order to have one? So this is the idea of singularity being found in plurality. Simplicity being found in complexity. So when we think of God, when you think of God, do you think of God as being simple or complex?
Both.
Who said both? Good job. But do you think of him as being simple or complex?
No. I just think of him as being.
But most of us, he's complex to us. We don't understand him. It's like an algebraic problem. When I look at an algebra problem, it's like, sorry Patrick, it's like fractures. When it's like an algebra problem. When I look at the problem, my eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
Okay? What's all of this X and Y stuff? The unknown entity.
But to Evie, I think it's very simple, because she's like, God is love.
Good. Here's the thing. The more mature you become, the more advanced a person becomes in his spiritual life, in her spiritual life, the more we come to understand God, the more complex he becomes to us. And this is the difficulty of the great debates. Not understanding the duality, the dual nature of God. Is he plural? Is he a plurality? Or is he a singularity? The answer is yes. Is he a complexity or is he a simplicity? The answer is yes. He's both at the same time. Because in his nature, what we call the Ein Sof, the infinite one, when you consider infinity, do you consider infinity to be simple or complex? You see it as complex, yet in truth, it is the simplest form. Why do we say that it is the simplest form? It is the simplest form because in its very nature, it has no definition, no boundaries, no borders. Therefore, it is simple. There are no defining terms. So when we consider God in His infinite form, He is actually not complex there, He is simple. He is not in plurality there, He is in singularity. It is only at creation that He begins to take on more complex forms. Why does He begin to take on more complex forms? Because He must define Himself. He must give Himself limitation. Why must He give Himself limitation?
Because we're limited.
Huh?
Because we're limited. We are. We can't understand.
Yes, but why must He give He gives Himself limitation?
So we can understand.
What we call, well, but upon creation, before man is even created, He takes upon Himself limitation. Simtsu, to make room. Okay? Why? Because as Ein Sof, if infinite is infinite, infinite means without borders, without boundaries, without definition. If He is without borders and without boundaries, He's all that exists, nothing exists except for Him. In the beginning, Reshit, Bara, but before Bara, Reshit Elohim. In the beginning was God. And there's nothing that exists. There's nothing else that exists. There's no time, there's no space, there's no matter. There's nothing. It's just Him. It's complex to us because it's difficult for us to conceive, to understand this part of His nature. That, in effect, He's all that exists. There's nothing else. If there's nothing else, what takes up all the, if you would, because we can't understand this, what takes up all the room?
His creation.
There is no creation.
He does.
He takes up all the room. He takes up all the space. Because there is actually no such thing as room or space or matter or time. These things do not exist. He is all that exists. If He is all that exists and He is infinite, what does infinite mean?
Without Him.
Without end. Without beginning, without end. This is why we wear rings. This is why the ring is the wedding band, is the symbol of a marriage, a love without end. It has no beginning, it has no ending. And so this is applied to God Himself. That He is without beginning, He is without ending, but even more than that, there's nothing that exists besides Him. That He has no boundary. That there's no end to Him. There's no stop to Him. There's not, this is God, and then there's something else. It is that this is God, and that's all there is. And this is a concept that is difficult for our human brains to understand, to grasp a hold of. This is true infinity. This is true infinity. So, in saying that, in order for you and me to exist, in order for creation to exist, God had to limit Himself to, in the Hebrew term, tzimtzum, to make place, to make room for creation to exist. As soon as He limited Himself, He gave Himself what? Boundary? Borders.
Limited.
Limitations. So, Nora's expecting a child. Nora and Joe are expecting a child. Hezekiah? And he comes soon, and in our day. Hezekiah. And so, where's Hezekiah right now? So, Nora had to, tzimtzum, Nora had to make room for the child within herself. Saying what? Her body is now limited in those areas. Where Hezekiah exists, now, are you limited anywhere else? No, just there. Just where the child exists. Yes, you answered correctly, thank you. Just where the child exists. She's like, whew. Just where the child exists. Is she limited? Saying what? That her body cannot encroach upon that area. Why? What would happen if her body encroaches in that area?
Pain.
What happens to the child? So in order for the child to exist, it's not that she ceases to exist, she simply limits herself, her body limits itself, herself, in that area of the womb. Now does that mean that there's a disconnection there? Does Hezekiah exist?
Yes.
Does Nora exist?
Yes.
So there you have the typical Jewish answer of yes and yes. Because they are two separate entities. You have Hezekiah and you have Nora. They're two separate entities. Are they disconnected from one another?
No.
No. In fact, what? They are very connected, and should Hezekiah, God forbid, should the baby be disconnected from the mother, what happens? The child cannot exist. The child cannot exist without the mother. Can the mother exist without the child? Yes. So, what? Saying what? I cannot exist without the Creator. Can the Creator exist without me?
Yes.
Yes. With me, you see, with Hezekiah, has Nora's life become simplified or complex?
Complex.
Should I say simplified or complexified? So is your life now simple or complex? As it was?
It's actually a little bit of both. In some things it's become simpler, but in other things it's...
But just your existence, the very fact of your existence has become complex by the fact that you have a child within you. That you have this duality taking place. You see what I'm saying? You see where this goes? You see how this works? Okay? So the same thing is true with God. We exist, by the way, understand this, we exist within Him. Why? Because in the beginning He's all that exists. So where are we supposed to exist?
Inside Him.
Just as a mother with a child. Just as a mother with a child. So, you have the singularity going to plurality. But the plurality always returns back to singularity. Say what? You have one, and from one you make all the other numbers. Before you can have any other number, you must have what? One. So, you go to all the other numbers, but all of the other numbers will always return back to 1. Okay? I'm in Cody's realm now, alright? So, I was in the health realm, now I'm in the math realm. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Alright, cool, man. I like it when these math teachers understand mine. That's anything from that. Anyway, alright, so the same thing is true with us. This is what happens in Yesod. Because Yesod is about building the kingdom. How do I build the kingdom? By having children. What do I mean by having children? Procreation. Now we've been kind of dancing around this. We will eventually get to it. We've been kind of dancing around this, the idea of circumcision. What does circumcision have to do with your faith? What does circumcision have to? Why are Jews circumcised? Why did God require Avraham and Moshe and all of the others? Why does He require them to be circumcised? Well, the organ that is circumcised has everything to do with procreation. Saying what? Procreation, going from singularity to what? And as soon as you have a child, your life goes from simple to complex. Because where it was just me, now it's me and this one. Where my thoughts and my concerns and all of these things were about me, now I'm concerned, my thoughts and my concerns are about myself, but even greater what? My children. So we're going from simplicity to complexity, we're going from singularity to plurality. If you are a citizen of the kingdom, if you are a citizen of Malchut, it is all of our responsibility to make more citizens, as it is for the responsibility of every human being to create more human beings. What is this command? What is the first command that God gives to Adam and Chava, to Adam and Eve? The first command that He gives to them is, be fruitful and multiply. What is the final command, if you would? What is the final command that Yeshua, that Jesus gives to the Talmudim, gives to the disciples? Go into all the world and make Talmidim, make disciples of all nations. So you see how in both sides we're going from singularity to plurality. We're going from simplicity to complexity. And so, this is me. Simple and singular. One. So I go and I make a new citizen of Emilio. I bring Emilio into the kingdom. You see, watch. I bring Emilio into the kingdom. So now we have Emilio. So now what? I've gone from singularity to what?
Plurality.
And I've gone from simplicity to... You see how that happens? Okay? Now what? Now, in his relationship with the Creator, in his relationship with the King, now it's this. He's into singularity. It's him. He's into simplicity. It's him. But he's also commanded to do what? To make citizens for the kingdom. So now what? So he goes and he tells Cody. Now what? Now what? He's gone from singularity to plurality. He's gone from simplicity to complexity. Now I'm still down here. Now there's how many of us? Now Cody goes. And he does. And he's still doing. And I'm still doing. And I'm still doing, and he's 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 still doing. And you see how this is working. What's happening here? We've gone clearly from singularity into what? Plurality. We've gone clearly from simplicity to complexity. But every time you make a convert, it reverts back to what? Singularity. And every time I bring someone into the kingdom, what happens to me? I'm still in my singular form. Together we are plural. I'm still in my simple form. It's together that we're complex. How does that relate in what I was saying concerning God? How does this relate to God? That in his simple form before creation, he's in singularity. He takes on duality, he takes on plurality when? Come on people, he takes on plurality when? At creation. Why? Because now it's not just him, it's what? It is he and us in creation. So he's gone from singularity into what? Plurality. When it was just him, it was simplicity. But now it is he and creation, so it has gone from simplicity to complexity. But what? But it always returns to singular and simple. Why? Because it always reverts back to himself. It always reverts back to himself. What we're saying is this: even though I bring Emilio into the kingdom, I still have to make my own choices and decisions, and he still has to make his own choices and decisions. So as I climb the tree, you'll remember the tree, and you'll remember that it has, between each sephirah, between each attribute, it has what? Bridges, remember? So what? So I must choose. I must make my own decisions. You cannot choose for me and I cannot choose for you. You cannot choose for me how I'm going to live my life. Nor can I choose for you how you're going to live your life. This is complexity returning to simplicity. This is plurality returning to singularity. I have to cross the bridge. You cannot cross the bridge for me. I have to cross the bridge. You cannot choose the way for me. I have to choose the way. So I cannot make your decisions for you, and you cannot make your decisions for me. It always reverts back to the singular. It always reverts back to the simple form. And it's cyclical. You will remember, you'll recall that the tree of life is also known as Jacob's ladder. And what is the form of Jacob's ladder? It's not a ladder. Descending and ascending, what did you say? It's circular. It's cyclical. It goes round and round. The old spiritual, we are climbing Jacob's ladder. Every round goes higher, higher. Because if you look in Kabbalah, if you look at Jacob's ladder, frequently it will be demonstrated, it will look very similar to the DNA spiral. And they came up with that concept before they knew about DNA. Because it's cyclical. It goes round and round. I pluralize by procreating. I make, if you would, copies of myself by procreating, both in the physical sense and in the spiritual sense. But after I have brought forth, you see, after Nora has brought forth Hezekiah, in Hebrew, Hezekiah, is she still the duality? No. What? The child becomes its own entity, his own entity. And Nora reverts back to what? Her singularity. But then what? God willing, she'll be able to do it again and bring forth another child. We call her Esther? I don't know. I'm just saying. This is the way it works. You see, I bring forth a citizen to the kingdom. I've procreated. Now what? Now I revert back to the singular form. And Nora and Joe have their desires and their wishes and their hopes and all of these kinds of things for this baby. But are you going to be able to determine these things?
No.
Can you make these decisions for the child? Or does the child have to choose it his own way? Yes. You can teach, you can train, you can do all of these things, but when it comes down to it, the end result is that the child chooses his own way. And so I can bring Emilio into the kingdom, and I can train him and teach him and do all of these things, but when it comes down to it, what? He has to make his own decisions. Thus, I cannot force, I am not to force anything upon anyone else. It is each person's individual choice. God has created each of us with free will, and I am free to choose to do or not to do. Whatever. Or however. The choice is yours. The choice is yours to make. And there's no one who can force you to choose or to not choose. You must do that on your own. Now, this does not mean that others cannot advise you. People will come to me and they will ask for advice in this matter or that matter, and I frequently will tell them, I cannot and I'm not going to tell you what to do. Mostly what I will say to you is, this is what the scripture says. But what? The choice is yours. I cannot force you to do anything. The choice is yours to make. When we're teaching, this is what the teaching is all about, whether it is on Shabbat or the Tree of Life or any of these things. The teaching is not to force anything upon you. The teaching is to lay out for you what the terms are, and then you choose to or not to. Now, I can advise you as to the choice that I would make, but I cannot force that choice upon you. That is up to you, wholly and completely. And this is what free will is all about. Therefore, what? I can lead you to where the food is, but I cannot make you eat it. That is a choice that you and you alone have to make. And so the cycle continues in this way. Teachers teaching students, who in turn do what? The teacher teaches the student, who in turn becomes a teacher. So this is how the education system works. That a student goes to school and is usually, oftentimes they're touched by a specific teacher, by a certain teacher, that they touched their life, they took the time to teach them well, and the student learned and became enthusiastic about the course, about the class, and these kinds of things, so that what? They in turn want to become a teacher and teach others. So you have a teacher, you have one teacher who's teaching 30 students in a class. And that teacher inspires this singular student here. So that this singular student here, the teacher does not force that student, simply teaches the student in a good and proper way so that the student becomes inspired. So you've gone from singularity to plurality. You see how this is? Singularity of the teacher to plurality of the classroom. Back down to what? The singularity of the student desiring to become a teacher. So now this student becomes a teacher of 30 students of a classroom. And God willing that this student who has become a teacher will now inspire one of his students to become a teacher. And you see how the system is working. You're going from singularity to plurality, back down to singularity into plurality, back down to singularity into plurality, over and over again. And it is constantly the cycle. And so we close tonight's teaching with a little bit of preparation for what's coming next week. And that is this. That the foundation, Yesod, in the Tanakh, the Old Testament, the foundation is identified with Chatzadik. Everyone say Tzadik. And what is it? What is Chatzadik? The righteous one. The righteous one is the foundation. And so tzaddik is Yesod. The tzaddik is Yesod. Now what does this mean? That tzedakah is foundational. Tzedakah, usually translated in our English Bibles as righteousness. Goodness. But tzedakah is goodness is more than just being good. Because tzedakah has to do with not how I am in my singularity, but how I am in my plurality. Tzedakah has to do more, it is more relational. It has to do with my interaction with you, with the people around me. And so in modern Hebrew, in modern Judaism, tzedakah is usually translated as a term what?
Charity.
Charity. In giving to charity. So giving to charity is considered an act of tzedakah. So a tzaddik will do tzedakah, will do charitable acts. But it's deeper than that. It's not just that a tzedakah will do charitable acts, but will do good by the people around him, will do good by the people with whom he comes in contact. This is true tzedakah. That I will do the right thing. So, you've heard the expression, I will do right by you. Have you ever said that to anybody? Or you've heard that said? Don't worry, I'll do right by you. Meaning what? I'm not going to do wrong. I'm not going to wrong you. I'm going to do right by you. It's a way of saying, I'm going to take care of you. Perhaps let me give you a more modern colloquial. I got your back. You ever say that? Have you ever told anybody that? I got your back. Don't worry, I got your back. Meaning what? I'm watching out for you. This is the position of the tzaddik, of the righteous one. The righteous one has your back. The righteous one will do right by you. The righteous one will do good for you, will do good by you. This has come to be known as the word charity. We think of charity as giving to the Red Cross, giving to Salvation Army, giving to this group or that group, giving to this cause or that cause. And so we actually use the phrase giving to charity. But showing charity is actually more than that. Showing charity is showing kindness. When I say that I have your back, when I say I'll do right by you, I'm saying that I'm going to do something I don't have to do. I can choose not to do this. I can choose not to watch over you. I can choose not to do good to you. I can choose not to be kind to you. I can choose other ways. I can choose other venues. Remember what I said. We each have our choices to make. We each have our decisions to make. We each have to cross the bridge. And I can force Emilio to do what? Can I force you to be good? Can I force you to be kind? Can I force you to watch my back? No. In fact, the truth is if I try to force you to watch my back, probably what? You're the one that's going to stab it. Thanks a lot, Emilio. Got your number, bud. I know where you live. Angel says he knows where you live too. Now I gotta look over both shoulders. So, what am I saying here? Okay, compare this to Chatzadik Yeshua Mashiach. Compare this to the righteous Yeshua, Jesus the Messiah. Did he have to do what he did? Or was it a choice set before him? Did he have to save? No. He elected to. Does he have to have our back? Does he have to show us good? Does he have to show us kindness? Does he have to show us mercy? No, and in fact, oftentimes do you and I not wonder why he even does? But you see, this is why we call him Chatzadik, the righteous one. Why? Because he does tzedakah. He does righteousness. That is, he does goodness. He does that which is right and good for us, saying he has our back. He's got this. He's watching over you. He's watching out for you. And so this is foundational for us to take the next step, is to understand the correlation between Yesod and Chatzadik, between foundation, the foundation of our trust, and the relationship between that and the righteous one, the tzaddik. Because if I do not understand the relationship between the foundational trust that I need to have and the righteous one, I'm not going to cross that bridge. This is why so many people stay in Malchut. This is why so many people stay immature in their faith, immature in their trust in God. This is why they do not grow. This is why they do not expand in their spiritual realm, in their spiritual world. Because they do not understand the relation of the foundation of emunah, of trust, to the tzaddik, to the righteous one. And understanding what he is doing. Not that I'm understanding exactly what he's doing, how it's going about, how it's being processed, what's going on, but understanding he's got my back and he's doing it for good. Why? Because he's a tzaddik, and this is the way of the tzaddik. Is to do to me kindly, is to do to me charitably. Even when I don't deserve it. So, from singularity to plurality, from simplicity to complexity, from complexity back to simplicity, from plurality back to singularity, around we go. And all of this doing what? All of this building foundations for us. Because as I'm interacting with you, I'm to be interacting with you the way Yeshua Mashiach, the Messiah, is interacting with me. So as he is showing me goodness and kindness, I'm to be doing the same for you. As he is showing me grace and mercy, I'm to be doing the same for you. As he's showing me forgiveness, I'm to be doing the same for you. As he is showing me goodness and blessing, I'm to be doing the same for you. And not for you only, but for all who are near to me. And by near to me, in proximity, not just in relation. But all who come in to proximity to me. Whether I know this person or I do not know this person. And everything about the kind of person I am is told in how I treat other people. And not just in how I treat those who are close to me, family and friends, but how I treat the stranger who is in my midst. If we want to know what kind of assembly we are, we know what kind of assembly we are by how we treat the strangers who are in our midst. If we want to know what kind of family we are the kind of family is determined by how we treat the stranger in our midst. If I want to know what kind of person I am, it is how do I treat not people who are close to me in relational terms, but people whom I do not know that cross my path. So how do I treat that person who ran the red light in front of me? How do I treat the person who is stranded on the side of the road? How do I treat the lady who's walking the street at night? How do I treat the guy who has a bad habit that he can't control? How am I treating people of whom I would consider to be lower classification than myself? And how I treat those goes a long way in telling me who and what I really am in my relationship with God. Because I'm supposed to be modeling after Him. I'm supposed to be exemplifying Him. I'm supposed to be identifying with Him. I'm supposed to be what? His shadow. I'm supposed to be His express image. And this is why this is taking us into Netzach, because Netzach is all about how how I deal with how I treat other people in the different circumstances of my life. Netzach is the great testing ground in which I learn to humble myself under the mighty hand of God. And in order for me to put myself lower, I must in turn put others where? Higher, yes. In order for me to go lower in estimation, I must raise others in estimation. And for our Yetzer Hara, our evil inclination, for our Nefesh Bechama, our animal inclination, our instinct. This is very difficult for us to do. Because the heart of the Yetzer Hara, the heart of the Nefesh Bechama, the heart of our instinctual self, seeks to serve me and put myself first. I take priority. In true spirituality, it is the reverse. You take the priority. You are above me. You are before me. So that Yeshua would say, the first shall be last, and the last shall be. Or he said, any who seeks to lead must do what? Be the servant. Be the servant. It's not that the king, people want to be the leader so that they can tell everybody else what to do. And in effect, what? Everybody waits on the king. But the Jewish perspective, the biblical perspective is actually the reverse. That the king is not catered to. The king actually is the one doing the catering. And Yeshua set this example for us. You remember that it was he, it was not Kepha, it was not Peter who offered to wash the feet. It was Yeshua who offered to wash the feet. Understanding that the Hamelech, that the king, Hamelech Yisrael, the king of Israel, had to write for himself the entire Torah scroll. It could not be done for him. It wasn't that he went out to the market and he purchased one. It wasn't like the President of the United States going to American Bible Society and online, with his credit card and buying the big family Bible, the most deluxe edition, and paying hundreds of dollars or whatever, and they FedEx it to him and it arrives at his doorstep at the White House, whatever, and they open it up and it's already there. The king had to write his own scroll. It wasn't even that he had a sofer to write it for him, a scribe to write it for him, but that he had to write it himself. Why? So that he would know all of the ins and outs of the Torah himself. It wasn't that he had other people do for him, but rather that he had to do it himself. This is the truth of the depth of spirituality, is not what I can get you to do, but what can I get myself to do. This is why we say, and we close here, this is why we say, it is not see something, say something, it is see something, do something. This is why I tell you, when you see someone in need, don't come to me and tell me that I saw someone in need and do this and do this and do this. I'm saying when you see someone in need, you do what you can for that person. Then when you've done what you can, then come to me. If more needs to be done, and we'll try to find the means to do more. As my dad used to preach, and I've said this over and over to this class, as my dad used to preach, a need seen is a task given. God put this person in front of you because He wanted you to do something about it. God gave me this responsibility because He wanted me to do something about it. So it's not about me putting off onto you something that I should be doing. It's not about me putting off something that God has brought to me. God brings this person in need to me, then the reason why God brought this person in need to me is because God wants me to do something about it. That number one, that is my test, and number two, that's my blessing. Amen? You see where I'm saying? This is my test and this is my blessing. But if I see someone who has a need and I put it off onto you, then what? Number one, I failed my test. Number two, you get the blessing. So I lose both. It is my responsibility. So the more that we learn to put down self and to lift up others, the better we are in our walk. The more humble we are, the better we are in our walk. The more we look at others as being created in the image of God and not myself alone. It's not just me who's created in the image of God, but every human being is created B'Tselem Elohim. I may not appreciate and I may not like everything that person is doing and what's going on in their life, but the potential for that person to be brought into the kingdom is there, is it not? But if I treat that person as though they're the slave and I'm the king, and I show disrespect and dishonor, and words of discouragement and these kinds of things, then rather than gaining a citizen for the kingdom, I have rather pushed them out. And they will walk the other way. And so let us learn to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our soul, and all our strength, and to love our neighbor as ourself. Be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Mashiach, for the sake of Elohim, for the sake of God, has forgiven us. And be careful when you entertain strangers, for some have entertained melchim, angels, without knowing. Let us be tzalchim, let us be righteous ones. Then let us act with tzedakah, let us act with righteousness. Do you move? That would say shalom, v'layla tov.